There are two things you need to understand about the day my life fell apart. I swiped right on a girl on a dating app, strictly as a joke, because my roommate double-dared me. I had $4 to my name and absolutely nothing worth losing. 11 hours later, 3 black SUVs pulled up outside my apartment. 6 men in suits climbed out. The biggest one, a guy built like a vending machine, looked at me holding a bag of gas station tacos and said, in the gentlest voice I have ever heard, "Mr. Miller, the Don would like to welcome you to the family." And I said, and let me be perfectly clear, this was the smartest thing I said all day, "I think you have the wrong guy. I deliver food." The vending machine smiled. It was worse than if he had frowned. "Yes," he said, "we know exactly who you are." And that right there was the problem. They did not know who I was. Nobody in this entire story ever knew who I was. That misunderstanding is the only reason I am alive to tell you this. And honestly, it is the only reason I have a girlfriend, a yacht, and a guy named Enzo who bursts into tears every time I compliment him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back up to the $4. My name is James Miller, and at the start of this story, I was, professionally speaking, a complete disaster. I had 3 jobs. I delivered food for 2 different apps. I worked the overnight shift at a customer service call center, where my entire purpose was to absorb the rage of people whose internet had gone down. And on weekends, I assembled furniture for people too rich to read instructions and too lazy to hold a screwdriver. 3 jobs, $4. That math should not work. And yet there I was, living proof that it does not. I want to describe my life at this point, so you understand the before. Because the after is going to be insane. I lived with my best friend Devin in an apartment where hot water was just a rumor. When I was a kid, I loved playing with my toys. I had a lot of them, and I would spend hours playing with them every day. One of my favorites was a toy car. It was red and had 4 wheels. I would drive it around the house and pretend I was a race car driver. I guarded it like a dragon. And I was tired. Not sleepy tired. The other kind. The kind you get from being yelled at professionally for a living. See, here is the thing about working customer service and food delivery for years. It does something to you. It hollows out a very specific part of your soul and replaces it with an unnaturally calm voice that says, "I completely understand your frustration, no matter what is happening." I once had a man scream at me for 9 straight minutes because his printer was not working. And it was not even our company. He just dialed a random number. And I stayed calm the entire time. That is not a skill. That is a survival adaptation, like how deep-sea fish stop having eyes. Remember that calm. It is going to accidentally make people think I am a psychopath. So the dare. It was Friday night. Devin and I were eating gas station tacos, which is what $4 gets you. And Devin was doing the thing where he swipes through dating apps and rates everyone out loud, like a sports commentator. He held up his phone and went, bro, look at this one." And I looked. And she was okay. I will be honest. She was out of my league in a way that felt almost aggressive, like the app had shown her to me as a prank. Dark hair, that sharp, confident look, a photo of her leaning against a car that cost more than my entire existence. Her name was Ava. Her bio said one word. The word was don't. That was it. Don't. Best bio I have ever seen. 10 out of 10. No notes. Swipe right, Devin said. She is going to be able to smell the $4 through the screen, Devin. Swipe right. I dare you. What is the worst that happens? She does not match. Same as every day of your life. And that, the worst that happens is nothing, same as every day of your life, that hit a little too close to home. So out of pure spite at my own biography, I swiped right. I swiped right on a girl named Ava, whose entire personality was one word. And I put my phone down. And I ate my sad taco, and I did not think about it again. Reader, I should have thought about it again. The SUVs came at 9 the next morning. Now, when 6 men in tailored suits get out of 3 identical black SUVs on your street, your brain does a funny thing. It refuses to believe they are for you. I actually stepped aside to let them pass. I held the door. I'm a polite disaster. The big one, I would later learn his name was Bruno, and yes, he was exactly as much of a Bruno as you are imagining, looked at me holding my leftover breakfast tacos, and delivered the welcome to the family line. And I delivered my I deliver food line. And then something happened that set the tone for this entire story. I panicked. And when I panic, thanks to years of customer service, I do not scream. Ego calm, unnaturally calm. My voice drops. I make steady eye contact. I say measured, polite things. So instead of freaking out like a normal person, I looked 6 armed men in the eyes in a dead flat voice and said, "Okay, walk me through what is happening here." Bruno, the vending machine, went quiet. The other 5 men exchanged a look, and I found out much later what that look meant, because Bruno told me in my own engagement party, weeping into a glass of wine, that look meant this man just got surrounded by 6 made men and asked us to walk him through it like he was reviewing a business proposal. He is not scared. He is not scared at all. Who is this guy? I was not brave. I was traumatized by call center. But you cannot explain the difference to a mafia enforcer. And God knows I tried for weeks. They put me in a middle SUV, very politely. Bruno even buckled my seatbelt, which was somehow the most threatening thing that happened all day. And we drove out of the city, up into the hills, through a gate that took 90 seconds to fully open. I timed it, because my delivery brain automatically calculates everything. And that habit is also going to accidentally make me look like a genius. Stay tuned. And up to a mansion that looked like a museum had a baby with a fortress. And that is where I met him, Don Salvatore Moretti. He was sitting in a study that had more books than I had seen in my entire life, wearing a cardigan, holding a cup of espresso. And he looked less like a crime boss and more like everyone's favorite grandfather, if everyone's favorite grandfather could have you dissolved. He looked up at me. He studied me for a long, long moment. And then Don Salvatore Moretti smiled and said the sentence that ruined and saved my life. "So you are the one who finally got past my daughter's little test." And I, having absolutely no idea what he was talking about, said the only thing my broken customer service brain could produce. "Can you tell me more about the test?" Which, to a paranoid crime lord, sounded exactly like a man playing it cool. It was not a man playing it cool. It was a man who had not slept and had $4. Let me explain the test, because I had to have it explained to me too, standing in that study and nodding like I understood. Ava Moretti, the Don't girl, was the Don's only daughter, and the Don wanted her married to someone strong, clever, and impossible to intimidate. For a year, he had paraded approved suitors past her, rival capo sons, ambitious lieutenants, one man who owned a chain of car washes that were definitely not just car washes. Ava hated every one of them. So she built herself a trap. She made a dating profile where none of her father's approved men would ever think to look. Her theory was simple. A man who found her naturally, ignored the family name, and swiped right on a woman whose entire bio said, "Don't might at least be interesting." The profile stayed up for 4 months. Thousands of men matched. Every one of them immediately sent either a pickup line, a shirtless photo, or a picture of a car they probably did not own. Then I matched with her. And I never messaged, because I forgot. I swiped right as a joke, put my phone down, finished my taco, and went to work. No pickup line, no car photo, no desperate second message. Nothing. To Ava, that looked like the ultimate power move. I had matched with the Don's daughter, displayed complete indifference, and vanished. She thought it was confidence. It was exhaustion, but she did not know that. She showed my profile to her father, probably just to annoy him, and said I was the first man on the app who had not immediately embarrassed himself. Don Salvatore, a man who solved problems by acquiring them, told Bruno, "Find him. Bring him. If he is the one who impressed my Ava, I want to look him in the eye." So they found James Miller. Then they ran the background check. And that is where a small misunderstanding became a medical emergency. Don Salvatore had his people run a full workup on me before I ever arrived. Standard for a potential son-in-law. And what came back should have shown them a broke gig worker with a dying car and $4. Instead, through a series of the funniest coincidences of my life, it painted a portrait of a criminal mastermind. Let me walk you through what my actual life looked like on paper to a paranoid crime family. Exhibit A. I had 3 jobs, all paid in cash or via gig apps, with no consistent tax footprint. To a normal person, that says poverty. To a mafia accountant, that says this man deliberately maintains multiple untraceable income streams. He launders his own presence. Exhibit B. My years of food delivery meant I had saved on my phone an encyclopedic knowledge of every back road, service entrance, alley, and shortcut in the entire city. My map history looked like I'd been casing the whole metro area. To me, that was how to drop off a burrito 90 seconds faster. To them, that was reconnaissance. Exhibit C. And this is my favorite. Years of customer service had given me a phone voice and a de-escalation ability so refined that I could talk a furious stranger off a ledge in under a minute. During my interview, which I thought was a weird kidnapping and they thought was a vetting, the Don had a man deliberately start yelling at me to test my nerve. And I did what I do to every angry customer. I went calm, made eye contact, lowered my voice, and said, "I hear you. I completely understand your frustration. Let's find a solution together." The man stopped yelling. He apologized. He got me a glass of water. The Don nearly fell out of his chair. He had never seen anyone handle Big Tony like that. Big Tony had made grown men cry, and I had handled him with the exact script I used on people whose cable was out. Exhibit D. When they grabbed me, I had asked them to walk me through what was happening. Cold, calm, analytical. Put it all together. And Don Salvatore Moretti was looking at a man with untraceable finances, complete knowledge of the city's hidden routes, ice-cold nerves under pressure, elite de-escalation skills, and the audacity to charm his daughter and then ghost her as a power play. He thought he had found a diamond, a hidden operator, a natural. He had found a man who was really good at his terrible jobs. And when I opened my mouth to explain all this, to say, "Sir, I think there has been a huge mistake. I delivered tacos. Here is what came out, filtered through pure panic and customer service instinct. Mr. Moretti, I do not think I am what you're looking for. I really am just a normal guy. I promise you, I am nobody." And Don Salvatore leaned back and smiled the warmest, most terrifying smile and said, "Of course you are nobody. That is exactly what somebody would say. I have never been so trapped by my own honesty in my life. Every truthful thing I said made me look like a legend playing coy. The truth was my cover story, and I could not take it off. They did not let me leave, obviously. You do not kidnap a man to marry your daughter and then let him drive home in a car with a check engine light that has been on longer than some marriages. They gave me a room in the mansion. The room was bigger than my apartment. The towels were softer than my bed sheets. I took the longest shower of my life and cried a little from stress and a lot from the water pressure. The next morning, the Don brought me into a business meeting, and I accidentally solved a problem that had been hurting the family for months. That was also where I first properly met Frankie Belomo. Remember Frankie? Frankie was the Don's underboss and oldest friend. Silver at the temples. Perfect suit. Warm smile. The kind of man who remembered every guard's birthday and brought coffee for the whole room before difficult meetings. Everyone loved Frankie. He handed me a cup and said, "Welcome, James. Around here, a man should never face bad news without good coffee." It was from a cafe across town called Bellini's. I knew the place because delivery apps had sent me there many times. Mediocre coffee, terrible parking, 40-minute pickup time. Nobody went there by accident. I noticed that. Then I forgot it. That part matters later. The actual meeting was about shipping. Trucks kept getting stopped. Cargo kept getting seized. The rival Moretti family always seemed to know which routes mattered. A map covered one wall, while serious men argued about informants, hidden trackers, and which employees should disappear first. Frankie stood beside the Don, calmly suggesting that the family had a mole. I stood in the corner, trying to become wallpaper. Then my delivery brain betrayed me. The routes were not being predicted by a spy. Not yet. They were being predicted by anyone capable of reading a clock. "Your trucks all leave on the hour," I said. The room stopped. I should have stopped too. I did not. 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Anyone watching for a week can predict the next departure. Randomize the times. 17 passed. 43 passed. Use service roads instead of the main arteries. And rotate the exits. You will reduce the intercepts immediately. Silence. Absolute, furniture-level silence. I realized what I had done and tried to reverse out of it. I did not know anything about this. I deliver food. Route timing is just too late. Don Salvatore stared at me like I had personally invented roads. One capo whispered. He read the whole operation in 10 seconds. Another made a small sign of the cross. Bruno placed one enormous hand on my shoulder and said with genuine emotion, "You see what the rest of us miss, Mr. Miller." I did not see what they missed. I saw what a delivery app sees. I had the exact strategic ability of route optimization software and the emotional stability of a man who had been yelled at by 4,000 strangers. Frankie did not join the celebration. He watched me over the rim of his coffee cup. His smile never changed, but his eyes did. Then he asked, very casually, "And if the Morettas adapt?" I shrugged. Then the problem stops being the schedule and becomes the person receiving the updated route. Another silence. Frankie smiled wider. "Exactly," he said. At the time, I thought he agreed with me. Later, I realized he was measuring me. The Don ordered the new schedule immediately. Departures moved to odd minutes. Service roads rotated. For the next several runs, the seizures almost disappeared. That was enough. The Don decided I was a hidden genius. Bruno decided I was his personal hero. 3 capos began asking me questions I was not legally, morally, or educationally qualified to answer. The more truthfully I explained that I was just a delivery driver, the more impressed they became. The more impressed they became, the more they trusted me. And the more they trusted me, the worse it would be when someone finally discovered that their criminal mastermind had $4 and a taco. I need to get out of here, I thought. That was when Ava walked in. She walked into that meeting like she owned the room, which, to be fair, she kind of did. She had her father's sharpness and none of his patience. She looked around at all these hardened criminals treating me like a war hero. And then she looked at me, really looked at me, and I watched her do the one thing nobody else in that mansion had done. She squinted. Ava Moretti was the first person to look at me and think, "Hang on." So she said, walking a slow circle around me like a cat around something it has not decided is food or a toy, "You are the ghost who swiped and vanished. The man who impressed my father in a single meeting. The strategic genius." She stopped in front of me. "Say something, genius." Everyone in the room leaned in, and I, under the crushing weight of expectation, panic deployed the only thing I had, which was radical honesty delivered in a dead calm voice. "I genuinely do not know what is happening, and I would like to go home." Ava stared at me, and then Ava did something that changed everything. She laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one, surprised out of her. The same kind of laugh her father should have been suspicious of. Because everyone else heard, "I would like to go home," as some deep philosophical power move, some cool guy detachment. Ava heard it as true. And something about a man telling the absolute truth in a house built entirely out of lies got her. "Dad," she said, not taking her eyes off me, "I want to talk to him. Alone." The Don beamed. He thought romance was blossoming. It was eventually, but not for the reason he thought. She took me out to the garden, and the second we were alone, she dropped the act, crossed her arms, and said, "Okay, who are you actually? Because my father thinks you are some criminal mastermind, and I have watched you flinch at 3 separate doors." And I looked at this terrifying, brilliant, beautiful woman, and I made the single best decision of the entire story. I told her the truth. All of it. The $4. The tacos. The dare. The forgotten swipe. The customer service voice. The delivery route brain. Big Tony and the glass of water. Everything. I confessed the whole ridiculous thing, standing in a mafia garden, fully expecting her to have me killed. And when I finished, Ava Moretti was quiet for a long moment. And then she grinned. A real, delighted, dangerous grin. And she said, "Oh, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me." Here is what I did not understand about Ava until that garden. She was as trapped as I was. She did not want the mafia life. She wanted out. She was smart enough to run a legitimate empire, and instead she was stuck being a bargaining chip. Her father wanted to marry her off to strengthen the family. Every suitor was another cage. She had built that dating profile not to find love, but to find leverage. Some wild card she could use to mess up her father's plans. And instead, she had found me. A completely harmless man that her father had hilariously decided was the most dangerous person alive. "Do you understand what you are?" she said, pacing the garden, lighting up with the plan forming in her head. "You are perfect. My father will never marry me off to anyone else now. He's obsessed with you, and you're not actually a threat to me, because you are." She gestured at all of me, "You." "So here's the deal, Taco Boy. We team up. You keep pretending to be the genius. I feed you what to say. Together, we play my father until we can both get what we want." "And what do you want?" I asked. She stopped pacing for just a second. The sharpness dropped, and I saw the real Ava underneath. "I want to run the family's legitimate businesses. The real ones. The hotels, the restaurants, the shipping. All the parts that do not involve anyone getting hurt. My father will not give them to a daughter, but he might give them to his brilliant new son-in-law's wife." She raised an eyebrow. "You would be a figurehead. I do the actual work. And when it is all legitimate, we would both be free." It was a good plan. It was a genuinely good plan. And I want to be honest with you about my reasoning for saying yes. Because it was not strategy. It was that she had laughed at my joke. And she had told me her real dream in a garden. And in a house full of people who thought I was someone else, she was the only person who liked the actual me, the broke, tired, honest disaster, and thought he was enough. So I said yes. "Partners," I said, and stuck out my hand. She looked at it. "We're going to have to sell this as a romance, you know? My father needs to believe it. I've been told I have a very calming phone voice." She laughed again. Second time. I was keeping count. I would keep count for the rest of my life. "Okay, Taco Boy," she said, shaking my hand. "Let us go run a crime family." So we did the fake dating thing. And I'm not going to pretend it was not the best few weeks of my life up to that point, because it was. And I think you already know where the word fake was heading. We had to sell it, so we spent time together constantly. Dinners the Dawn arranged. Walks through the estate. Public appearances where I stood beside Ava looking mysterious while she quietly told me which fork to use. The thing about pretending to fall for someone is that it is only acting if you're not also doing it for real. I was doing it for real. Obviously, I had fallen for her in the garden. The fake relationship was paperwork my heart had already filed. Ava was harder to read. She was so good at performing that I could not tell where the act ended. She would take my arm at dinner, lean close, and whisper what I needed to say next. Her breath against my ear was not, for the record, helping me stay calm and analytical. She would catch me looking at her and smirk. She knew. Ava knew everything. Our first major test came at a dinner with Lorenzo Moretti, the youngest capo in a rival family, and a man who wore enough cologne to qualify as chemical warfare. The Don invited him to the mansion under the excuse of discussing peace. In reality, everyone wanted to study everyone else while eating expensive food nobody actually enjoyed. Before dinner, Ava gave me instructions. "Lorenzo likes to provoke people," she said. "He will mention the missing cargo. Do not threaten him. Do not confess anything. Say as little as possible." "I can do that. You once explained your entire financial situation to a kidnapping victim interview." "I was trying to be helpful." "You are never more dangerous than when you're trying to be helpful." At the table, Lorenzo sat across from me, smiling like he had already written my obituary. "So, this is the famous James Miller," he said, "the invisible strategist." I almost looked behind me. Ava placed one hand on my knee under the table. It was meant as a warning. My nervous system interpreted it as a full building evacuation. Lorenzo swirled his wine. "I hear the Morettis changed every shipping route after one conversation with you." I used Ava's strategy. I said nothing. This was apparently terrifying. Lorenzo waited. I continued saying nothing, because I genuinely had no idea what response would not get me buried. Across the table, two armed men shifted in their chairs. Lorenzo's smile weakened. Finally, he said, "A quiet man. I respect that." I nodded once. Bruno, standing behind me, looked proud enough to cry. Then Lorenzo tried again. "Tell me, James, if a business arrangement repeatedly disappoints you, what do you do?" Now, to everyone at that table, this was coded language. He was asking what I would do if the Morettis kept interfering with shipments. To me, it sounded exactly like a customer service question. So I answer from the heart. First, I document the pattern. Then I give the other side one clear chance to fix it. If the service keeps failing after that, I stop using them and build a system that does not need them. The entire table went silent. Lorenzo slowly put down his glass. Ava's hand froze on my knee. I realized I had probably done something. Lorenzo leaned forward. You would cut us out completely? I was talking about bad service. Nobody believed me. He asked, and if the failed service refuses to be replaced? I had handled this exact conversation with internet customers. Then you make the transition before they realize they are no longer necessary. Bruno made the sign of the cross. One of the Moretti guards stopped chewing. The Don looked at me with such joy that I knew my life had become worse. Under the table, Ava squeezed my knee hard enough to leave a legal record. Lorenzo stared at me for a long moment, then smiled carefully. Mr. Miller, I think we understand each other. We absolutely did not. But he stopped provoking the Don. The dinner ended peacefully. 3 days later, the Morettis withdrew from 2 disputed routes without anyone firing a shot. The Don called it psychological warfare. I called it the standard cancellation retention flow. Later, Ava pulled me into an empty corridor. What was that? She demanded. I answered his question. You told a rival capo we would replace his entire family before they noticed. I said to document the pattern first. She stared at me, and she started laughing so hard she had to lean against the wall. That was laugh number 7. I was still counting. The partnership worked both ways. Ava taught me the language of power, the names, the alliances, and which men would take a badly phrased sentence as permission to start a war. I taught her the legitimate businesses, and for the first time in my life, my terrible resume became useful. I had worked restaurants, delivery routes, customer support, and furniture assembly. I knew how suppliers overcharged. I knew why customers stopped returning. I knew how managers hid theft inside waste reports. I knew that when an employee says, the inventory system is just like that sometimes, the inventory system is usually helping them steal. At night, Ava and I sat in her study. I taught her how ordinary businesses actually worked. She taught me how not to get murdered at breakfast. Somewhere between hotel spreadsheets and assassination etiquette, the con stopped feeling like a con. It became the first real partnership either of us had ever had. Frankie was always nearby. He congratulated me after the Moretti dinner. He brought coffee to the next strategy meeting. Bellini's again, from across town. Another miracle from our mysterious genius, he said warmly. But when everyone else laughed, Frankie watched me. Not with admiration, with calculation. Then the cargo attacks changed. My randomized schedules worked. Ordinary interceptions dropped almost to 0. But the most important shipments still got hit. Not often. Precisely. That meant the family no longer had a predictable schedule. They had a real leak. The Don became paranoid. And paranoid crime bosses do not schedule healthy team building exercises. They start eliminating suspects. Ava pulled me aside, genuinely worried for the first time since I'd met her. If my father starts a war with the Morettis, people I care about are going to die. We need to find the leak first. Then she looked at me. James, you're the only person in this house I trust. Because I am a genius? No, because you're the only person here with nothing to gain by lying to me. That was the nicest thing anyone had ever said to me. It was also a dangerous amount of responsibility to place on a man whose core ability was remaining calm while strangers screamed about printers. But I said yes, because she asked, and because I was completely, professionally, catastrophically in love with her. Here's how I found the traitor. I found him because of coffee. Remember Frankie? The trusted underboss. The Don's oldest friend. The man who brought Bellini's coffee to difficult meetings, even though Bellini's was across town, badly located, and aggressively average. My delivery brain remembered. When you deliver food to the same buildings for years, people reveal patterns they do not know they are broadcasting. You learn who tips, who lies about their apartment number, who orders dinner for 2 but only owns 1 chair. So while everyone else investigated phone taps and secret transmitters, I looked at receipts. Every major shipment that got hit had something in common. That morning, Frankie bought coffee for the whole crew. Always Bellini's. Always personally. Always during the exact window when the final route was being distributed. Bellini's made no sense for him. He had a professional espresso machine 10 feet from his desk. The cafe was 40 minutes away, with terrible parking and slower service than a government office during lunch. The coffee was not the reason for the trip. It was the cover. He was meeting a Moretti contact and passing the route while carrying back 12 cups as proof that his absence had been harmless. Nobody else noticed, because nobody else had been financially punished by enough delivery apps to memorize the pickup problems of every cafe in the city. My cursed minimum wage knowledge had finally become forensic analysis. I brought the pattern to Ava first. She went pale, then furious, then immediately practical. Because Ava could move through 3 emotional stages in the time it took me to open a spreadsheet. A pattern is not proof, she said. I know. So we make proof. We created a fake shipment. High value. Secret route. Irresistible. Ava built the plan so only one account could access the final route, Frankie's. She mirrored the access log to a private server he did not know existed. Then she arranged for a security camera across from Bellini's to stay pointed at the cafe entrance. I contributed by naming the fake cargo Premium Imported Olives, because no one has ever started a gang war over office chairs. We told Frankie that morning. He ordered coffee. That afternoon, the Morettis attacked the fake truck. They found nothing but empty crates, 2 trackers, and one deeply confused driver who had been told he was transporting olives for national security. Frankie was the leak, confirmed by the route log, the cafe camera, and a coffee order. But he realized the shipment had been a trap. Only 3 people knew the route: Ava, me, and him. He also knew Ava would need time to bring the evidence to her father without looking like she was accusing the Don's oldest friend based on a beverage. Frankie moved first. Frankie's plan was clean. I have to give him that. He could not simply kill me. I was the Don's golden future son-in-law, the mysterious strategist, and now the man who had publicly embarrassed a Moretti capo using customer retention language. Too visible. So Frankie decided to frame me. He went to the Don and claimed he had discovered the real traitor me. The outsider with untraceable finances, poverty. The man with suspicious knowledge of every hidden route in the city, tacos. The calm operative who never reacted to threats, call center trauma. Frankie took every accident that had built my legend and flipped it into evidence that I was a Moretti agent sent to destroy the family from inside. The horrible part was that it made sense. Mysterious outsider is an enemy spy with a much better story than exhausted delivery driver forgot he swiped on an app and accidentally joined organized crime. My fake legend had become the perfect noose. The Don called a full family meeting in the big study. Bruno stood by the door. Capos filled the room. Frankie laid out his case, point by point, calm and wounded, like exposing me personally broke his heart. Ava stood across the room with her face carefully blank. She had the access log. She had the cafe footage. But there was a problem. Frankie had already told the Don that Ava was compromised because she had fallen for me. If she presented the evidence too early, he would call it fabricated. So she waited and entrusted me to do the one thing nobody in that house expected: tell the truth. Don Salvatore looked at me, and for the first time since I had arrived, the warmth was gone. James, he said quietly, Frankie makes a compelling case. You get one chance, and I will know if you are lying. He leaned forward. Who are you, really? The entire room waited. Frankie looked certain he had won, and I realized every honest answer I had given before had sounded like humility from a genius. So this time, I had to tell the truth so completely, so specifically, and so humiliatingly that no mastermind would ever use it as a cover story. I took a breath. My name is James Miller. I had $4 in my bank account when your men picked me up. I worked 3 jobs. I delivered food. I answered angry calls overnight. And I assembled furniture on weekends. Devin dared me to swipe right on Ava. I forgot to message her because I was tired. I fixed the shipping schedule because I have optimized 10,000 food deliveries. I stayed calm during your intimidation test because strangers have screamed at me for years, and part of my soul is no longer available. I am not a criminal genius. The room was silent. I found Frankie because he buys bad coffee. Frankie's smile twitched. I continued. Bellini's is 40 minutes from here. It has terrible parking and makes coffee worse than the machine in his office. He only goes there on mornings when important shipments get hit. The cafe is the handoff. The coffee is the excuse. Frankie laughed once. A charming story from a desperate man. You were right, I said. A story is not enough. That was Ava's cue. She stepped forward. For the first time in the entire meeting, Frankie looked scared. Ava placed a tablet on the Don's desk. I created the fake route, she said. Only Frankie's account opened the final file. I mirrored the access log before he could erase it. She changed the screen. And this is Bellini's security footage from the same morning. Frankie meets a Moretti courier 12 minutes after opening the route. Another screen. And these are his calls. Same contact. Same mornings as the previous attacks. Frankie's face changed color. Not pale. Gray. The exact color of a man discovering that the woman he had dismissed as a bargaining chip had built a case around him while he was busy framing her boyfriend. He reached for the last defense available. She fabricated it. She's in love with him. Ava looked him directly in the eyes. Both things can be true. I am in love with him, and you are still the traitor. That was the moment I fell in love with her again, which was inconvenient because I was already at capacity. Don Salvatore looked from the evidence to Frankie, then to me. I finished the only defense I had left. I'm not a Moretti spy. I am a broke guy who accidentally became your future son-in-law and fell in love with your daughter for real. I noticed Frankie because being poor taught me to see small things powerful men ignore. Ava approved it because she is the smartest person in this room, and half the people here keep forgetting that because she is a woman. Nobody moved. Frankie's plan was dead, not because I outplayed him like a mastermind, because Ava and I did exactly what we had promised in the garden. I noticed what everyone missed. She turned it into something nobody could deny. Don Salvatore stared at us for a long, long moment. Then he started to laugh. The Don laughed until he had to wipe his eyes. For dollars, he said. Bad coffee. My oldest friend builds an empire of lies, and the two of you destroy him with delivery receipts and a mirrored file. He looked at me. My daughter's criminal mastermind is a delivery driver. Yes, I said. I have been saying that for weeks. You did, he admitted. I thought you were being modest. Then he looked at Ava, and the laughter faded into pride. And my daughter built the trap. Ava crossed her arms. Also something I have been saying for years. That landed harder than anything I had said. The Don ordered his men to verify every file. They did. The access log was real. The cafe footage was clear. The calls led directly to a Moretti contact. Frankie had been selling routes for months. I'm not going to describe what happened to him. This is a family show. Let us say he was removed from the organization with immediate and permanent effect and leave the camera outside the room. Then Don Salvatore did something I did not expect. He offered us both the future we had been trying to steal from him. He turned to Ava first. The legitimate businesses are yours. Not because you are James's wife. Because you found the traitor, protected this family, and proved you should have been running them already. Ava went completely still. For once, she had no immediate comeback. Then the Don put a hand on my shoulder, and I had spent weeks trapped by their assumptions. First they thought I was dangerous, then brilliant, and possibly a spy. Every version of me belonged to someone else. Now they knew everything. The $4, the tacos, the call center, the fact that my greatest tactical weapon was knowing which cafe had bad parking. And they still wanted me there. I looked at Ava. Her face had been carefully controlled through the entire meeting. Now it softened. The con had become real for both of us a long time ago. Neither of us needed to pretend anymore. So let me land this properly, because I promised you a clean ending and I hate cliffhangers. I stayed, but not as a criminal mastermind, and not as Ava's figurehead. Ava took control of the family's legitimate businesses, the hotels, restaurants, shipping companies, and every operation where nobody had to disappear for missing a meeting. She ran them better than anyone expected, which was insulting only because everyone should have expected it. She made the legitimate side so profitable that the other side slowly became unnecessary. Her father pretended this was not her plan. Ava pretended to believe him. I ran operations beside her. Real operations. Spreadsheets, not guns. It turned out that a man who had spent years doing invisible work could see an organization from the bottom up. I fixed hotel supply routes, rebuilt the restaurant complaint system, found 3 managers skimming through waste reports and delivery receipts. I was good at it, not because I was a legend, because invisible people learn to notice everything. Bruno became my closest friend. I gave him my old phone charger, the one that actually worked, and he cried. He keeps it displayed on his desk like a religious artifact. We did not discuss this. Devin came to visit the mansion. He looked at the house, the cars, Ava, and the yacht. Then he looked at me and said, "Bro, the taco dare." That was all he could say for 2 days. Ava and I stopped pretending, without any dramatic rainstorm or speech. One night in her study, she looked up from the hotel accounts and said, "You know this is not a con anymore, right?" I said, "It stopped being a con in the garden." She nodded. "I know. I was checking if you knew." That was us. We married the next spring. Small ceremony. Her father cried. Bruno cried more. Devin's best man speech was 90% about the taco dare and 10% legally questionable details about our old apartment. It was perfect. At the beginning, I thought I was nobody. $4. 3 jobs. A dying car. A phone charger I guarded like treasure. Then a joke swipe dropped me into a house full of powerful people who decided I was a legend. They were wrong both times. I was not nobody. I was not a criminal mastermind either. I was a tired man who had learned to pay attention, stay calm when everything was on fire, and notice people the powerful overlooked. Those skills did not look impressive while I was delivering tacos. They became impossible to ignore once someone finally looked at me. My name is James Miller. I swiped right on a mafia boss's daughter as a joke. Best $4 I ever spent. And Ava says hello. She also says the taco was the least embarrassing part of my life. She is right. She's always right. Honestly, that is still the most terrifying thing about her. James's story shows us that the instincts we develop from life's hardships, when placed in the right context, become our most brilliant achievements. The calm that made the mob fear him was actually the numbness earned through years of abuse. We often believe we are ordinary, but the calluses we build just to survive are actually our strongest armor. The truest romance in life is not about becoming a king. It is about being a nobody and having someone see right through your struggles and still choose to hold your hand. James won because he was real and because he found someone who valued that reality. If you were in his place, at that tempting crossroads, would you choose to wear the mask of a genius and enjoy the wealth? Or would you have the courage to go back to being that ordinary but honest version of yourself?